And welcome back to LinkedIn Logs. No. Late Night Lately. I was so sure. I said I knew this was going to be LinkedIn Logs. I was so wrong. Welcome back to Late Night Lately, the late night show. I'm your host, Chad White. I usually have jokes at this point in the broadcast, but I did not have acuity to write any jokes down. I'm pretty smart. Using big words like that. Acuity? Down? Oh my God. What's been going on? Nothing. Nothing's been going on. I've been watching, in terms of late night. Yeah, the catching up thing. You have to pay attention. You have to listen to the Constitutionals if you want to catch up to me. Is this shirt buttoned up all the way? No, it's not. Only the necessary buttons are buttoned. You may hear the pets eating in the background. I just fed them. It's Friday night, 5:30 p.m. People are coming up from work and getting ready to go out with their friends, and I'm recording two poorly listened to comedy podcasts. I can hear the dog slurping away in his water. Oh, what an interesting week in late night it's been. Let's go to YouTube to recap some of it. Jimmy Kimmel was off on Monday, and I don't know why, but I definitely recognize that he was. Late night, it's been a tour de force this week when it comes to people who have been on shows. I think Seth Meyers had a wonderful set of shows this week. Fallon, I think, did too. Fallon also re-signed his contract. He will be staying until 2028 alongside Seth. This makes me miss the shows like the Amber Ruffin show. We need more diversity. I just came off of talking about diversity on the Constitutionals, but we need more variation in late night. If people are upset about me using the word diversity, and also, I'll just go show by show like I usually do. After Midnight had just a giant mix of people when it comes to their show. Like, they had one show that was Scott Aukerman, Carl Tart, and Mary Elizabeth Winstead. And then the show that aired on Thursday night had Kate McCucci, Jenna Ushkowitz, and Elliot Glazer. Just a very different gaggle of comedians. I do, as much as they should be looking at newer people, they also need to be going back to older people too, that were a part of the original show. Again, I'm going to keep pointing that out. Any Hoosers, Kimmel had another banner week. Also, this is something that was so very interesting to me. I did not watch the Jesse Plemons interview, but I don't know what he was promoting. It just says new film, but then there was the Donald Glover and Maya Ernstine interview, and that was the same episode. I don't know why we are seeing those two do press right now when Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which is what they were promoting, season 1 on Prime, had already happened. This is like, yes, things, schedules happen and all that stuff, and we have different. We sometimes a week after a show premieres or a movie premieres, the stars come on a talk show. But it's so strange to me. I was going to say fascinating, but it's so strange to me to see them promote a show that has been out for months. A show that even I finished on time. And it takes me forever to watch new shows. Case in point, I'm behind on the new Doctor Who. I think the guy is great. I think his companion is great. And I think the show looks wonderful. I think it has never looked better than before. It still has elements of and I'll get back to late night in a second. It still has elements of the chintzy, very, robust, handmade versions of Doctor Who that I think Eccleston and Tennant had to deal with. But also, it just looks more polished, and I like more polished. The same like with Jodie Whittaker. Unfortunately, I did not watch Peter. What's his name? I did not watch a lot of his, but I've seen a good amount of Jodie Whittaker, and I'm going to try to catch up on all of it, everything I missed, including a lot of Tenet stuff and Matt, what's his face, and the rest of them. But this is this new version of Doctor. And also, one of my biggest issues is that Max still has all the old Doctor Who. Now it's split. I don't want to go to 7 different places to watch things. Anyway, that's it. All right, moving on to Seth Meyers. Oh God, are we going to talk about that? Yeah. Okay. So there was some news that happened this week with his show, but we'll get to that in the news segment of this. But it's he had one of the big things he did this week was he had Will Ferrell on, and then they did a Second Chance Theater, which is a segment that I don't think that they bring out often, maybe like once every other year or so. And he also did. Seth went day drinking with Julia Louis-Dreyfus, which was an interesting choice because he's done Lord and then Will Forte, and also he's done Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Lizzo. Like it's a crazy set of people that he's done. But I love those day drinking segments. One thing that was really striking about this is that they did it in the middle of the week. It's so crazy that they went out and day drunk in the middle of the week like that. Because all I can think about when I watch that segment in particular is I have to go to the gym in the morning. I can't, like, even if I hosted a late night show, I would basically have the same regimen I do now, and I'd be like, I gotta go to the gym in the morning. Why can't we just have done this on a Friday? Or he's done one on a Sunday, I think, or a Saturday. The Daily Show had Klepper host this week, and Stewart and Jon Stewart interviewed, and Jordan Klepper. Jon Stewart interviewed Monica McNutt, but they had a good set of guests this week, including Maya Hawke and Kevin Bacon, which is a good set of people. And then also, I think the correspondents are doing a really good job. They also brought back Charlemagne the God in a segment that I did not watch. Yeah, you got to be truthful about these things. Speaking of things I did not watch, The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. I have not watched that show in a couple of weeks now. Oh, yeah, on Seth Meyers. Oh, I have to watch that. Interesting. Jake Gyllenhaal is just Senator Cory Booker. Okay. Well, good for him. There's not much I can say about that. And then tonight's show, again, I just have this appreciation for Jimmy Fallon. I don't know what it is. And I think it's mostly because people are hating on him, but I really do have an appreciation for Jimmy Fallon because he's got to keep the show moving along. And everybody is different about that. He interviewed Will Ferrell as Ron Burgundy. And that's the highlight for me this week. He did talk to Steve Carell, but I kind of just passed over that. And also the main actors from Baby Reindeer. That's right. That was last week. Last week. Okay, that's why I didn't remember that this week. Okay, so moving on from that, and let's get into some the one thing I really want to talk, or the two things I guess I have to talk about. There's budget cuts coming for late night, and I think across the board we're going to be seeing just less styles of the show. After midnight, when that premiered, it was, and it still is, a very cheaply produced show. And that's not to say that it looks horrible or anything. It's just I know for a fact what is going into producing that show. They have the one giant TV monitor next to Taylor, her podium, and then 3 other podiums with screens on them. And that's pretty much it. There's no production value save for the lights, and the audience is so close. But that's all that show really needs, as opposed to Fallon's show, which has The Roots, and which is, again, I'm still flabbergasted. And they've been in that studio for so long, and they have to make all that space work. And then you can see the difference between Fallon, who is, I would say, up. And you know what? I'll put Colbert. So Fallon and Colbert, who are at the top echelon. And then I would say Myers is in the middle. And I would say slightly above Myers is Kimmel, mostly because I think they own that building that they're in, and also just the giant TV screen they use in the back. And then on the bottom portion of that would be at midnight, after midnight. But budget cuts are very big. If these shows are going to continue going on and be stalwarts for the networks, and we're going to have to lose some things. So you're going to see a lot of shows. If Kimmel goes to Brooklyn every year, then you're not going to see him go to DC as well. And he doesn't go to DC, but I'm saying like that was a thing. If that was a thing, if he went to 2 places a year, then you'd only see him go to 1 place. And as such, Nelly Andreeva reports for Deadline that Late Night with Seth Meyers is dropping the house band in budget cuts. The show was renewed through and Seth Meyers is staying on through 2028. But this upcoming season, when the show comes back from a summer hiatus, they're going to not have the house band for the first time in 44 years. The band is led by Fred Armisen, and they're not going to be producing. They're not going to be. All right, so here's the thing. They're going to be making music for the show, but live music is not going to be a permanent feature on the show going forward. The decision, believed to be a cost-saving measure, was revealed by band member Eli Janey, who's also the associate musical director on the show, in an interview with Vulture. Sadly, it's the reality of broadcast in a shrinking market, streaming eating into this and YouTube eating into that. Streaming is not making money either. So budgets everywhere have been cut and cut and cut. I liken it to a Spotify moment in music, where suddenly it's like nobody wants to pay for music. Music gets devalued, said Eli Whitney. So the band was informed of this more than a month ago. The cut also includes the crew that works with the musicians, which is sad. So people are losing jobs because NBC doesn't want to foot the bill for this anymore. Even though the band, I would say, isn't a giant fixture when it comes to Late Night with Seth Meyers, it is still sad to see this go, because they've been with Seth for 11 years, and it's hard to imagine a late night show without music. I know After Midnight and The Daily Show don't have bands, and that's probably where NBC looked. They probably said, or the producers, they probably said, hey, these shows don't have bands and they're doing, fine enough. And the music's not really a fixture, a main point. But it still helped to have a place for Fred Armisen to pop in, because he is the leader of that band technically. And it's also great to see the guests come in, the guest guitar players or the guest drummers. They never had a guest bassist. Just like a doom, 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 doom. There's our guest bassist, Jimmy Rockwell. He'll be playing. He's got a new album out. Only the bass notes. Doom, 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 doom. This is why I didn't write monologue jokes for this episode. Oh, but the last ones were so good. I didn't want to devalue them, make them worse. So it stinks. It stinks to not have this band anymore. So they're going to be making the music. They're going to make music for the show. Janny and also Seth Jabor and Sid Butler, who are also part of the band. But they just won't perform it live. Now, continuing on with Seth Meyers. This comes from The Rap. The Rap, written by Adam Chitwood. Seth Meyers' whirlwind of late night podcasts and stand-up keeps him creatively sharp. They feed one another. It's just a conversation talking about Seth's 2 podcasts. The Lonely Island and Seth Meyers podcast, which I would have hoped they found a better name. And also Family Trips. He hosts with his brother. I think it's a very good conversation, and I think you should just read it. It just talks about how Seth's creative work is, again, feeding off each other, how one podcast is helping another podcast, is helping the show, and it's all different muscles. It's like going to the gym. This is the second gym analogy I used in 2 different podcasts, because I used it in Constitutionals right before recording this. It's like going to the gym. You're getting strong. You don't just do cardio. You don't just lift weights. You don't just do mobility. You do a lot of it. There's a lot more stuff in the gym, trust me. But if he's using these three as pillars, then whatever. And yeah, I just think it's a fascinating conversation. But I do want to get to this other story. Jon Stewart goes into more detail about Apple exit and reveals execs' concerns. They didn't censor me, but our aims don't align in any way. This is written by Jacques Scharf over at Variety. Now, this is something that was sent in press release this morning, right before I left for Inside Out 2. Matt Smith is the other Doctor Who. I knew it was Matt something. He's a cover story, I guess, for Variety right now. Oh, God, I can't believe it. How am I even a Doctor Who fan? I think you mean Doctor Whom. I'm not kidding, I make that joke every single time I turn on an episode of Doctor Who. And then someone's like, Doctor Who? I go, I think you mean Doctor Whom. And I laugh. The pets look at me, and I repeat it, and then they don't laugh again. We know that Jon Stewart did the talk show for Apple TV, The Problem with Jon Stewart, for Apple TV Plus in 2021. It was a multi-year first look deal that he had with them, and then the show last October was confirmed it was not coming back. The rumor was that, the pervasive story was that he wanted to do a story about China, and since Apple TV has ties to China, they put the kibosh on that. But now he's come out onto a podcast called The Town on Rolling Stone, and he said, they didn't censor me. It wasn't free speech. When you work for a corporate entity, that's part of the deal, even at Comedy Central. The deal is I get to do what I want until it's going to hurt their beer sales or whatever it is they want to sell. And that's the deal we all make. It seemed as though he stepped on toes, and it was something that they were pushing up against, which it makes sense for them because China is a huge market for them. But also, you're going to have to, if you're Apple, you're going to have to choose a side at some point. You can't be a company that wants to keep all of everyone's user data private, but then also have children building phones in factories in China. Stewart detailed one example of the disagreements he got into with Apple. It centered on a conversation Stewart had for The Problem with economist Larry Summers. The two gentlemen were talking about federal trade interests and corporate profits when Summers pointed on the glaringly obvious fact that Stewart was hosting a talk show for Apple. Stewart admitted that all corporations, meaning Apple as well, are gouging customers. This is fun. We play the interview for the audience. They explode like we just hit a three-pointer at the buzzer. The show ends. We go downstairs in full Rudy mode. The Apple executives walk into the dressing room afterwards with a look on their face. And I was like, oh my God, did the factory explode? What happened? And they go, are you going to use that Summers thing? I was like, the one where the crowd cheered. We went back and forth for a couple of weeks before the show aired about that particular moment. It was then I realized, our aims don't align in any way. We're trying to make the best, most insightful execution of the intention that we can make, but they're protecting a different agenda, and that's when I knew we were in trouble. He has no ill will against Apple, which is important. But so when you're not aligned in the same with the same ideals, it really becomes a kind of push on both sides when wanting to make a show. So if they push him on that idea, then what happens when it comes to a different topic? What happens when he wants to do a story about how AI is, like if he was still on Apple TV Plus, and how AI is taking over and how we are unsure of it all, and Apple just said we're partnering with ChatGPT to help feed information for Siri, or Apple Intelligence is what they're calling it. So at the same time, you have to challenge. I was thinking of a joke that I was thinking of while I was talking, and I just couldn't. Oh my God, It's happening. And I just couldn't pull it from the back of my mind, which is where we go to in Inside Out 2. Only in theaters. And then Disney Plus in 6 months. Probably 7. Definitely before Thanksgiving. But when you have the both sides pushing, it's like a tug of war. Let's take the push analogy, make it pull. It's like a tug of war. When both sides are equally pulling, one side's got the might of billions of dollars behind their back, and one side's got the might of a bunch of atheist hipsters who watch for news, which are both equally strong. It's at least in this case, I guess. I know I made a joke, but at least in this case, then you're gonna be at a stalemate, and then at some point Apple's gonna be like, well, I guess the show's over, and that's exactly what happened in October. They want to paint the middle line, but when it comes to news, especially when you have the facts, cough, Fox News, cough, there's no gray area for a lot of things. We can't just always go down the middle. Sometimes, there's side. You can't arm teachers and hope that avoids school shootings. That's not going to help. Gun control, gun laws. What is stop? Oh, now I'm getting newsy and political with it. Oh God, if CNN would hire me back. But it's nice to have a little bit of the air cleared up. I would have figured that something like this, considering what we've heard about how that all went down, the original version of the story. And if you haven't seen Jon Stewart talk to Lena Khan from the Federal Trade Commission on The Daily Show a couple of weeks ago, you should listen to him talk about a version of this story with her. All right, listen, I'm done. If you like what you heard here, head to the website, cpluscomedy.com, where I talk to your favorite people in the entertainment industry. One day I'll have an interview for this show. You can, if you want to watch a video version of this show, you can go to youtube.com/cpluscomedy, where you can also see video versions of the other shows, LinkedIn Logs, which is the Jobs podcast, and the Constitutionals, which is the entertainment business news podcast. It started so loud, the music. It was just too loud for me. And you can subscribe to those wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at @C+Comedy. Follow me on those platforms at Chad Blackwhite. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.